Ladies and gents, my name is PepperBelly and welcome to today's video. Now, in this video, I want to discuss what I think would be the ideal tactical shooter. What would be the best tactical shooter to come out today, in my mind, from years of gaming and playing tactical shooters and milsims. And it's kind of interesting because I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not like coming up with some grand, crazy idea that hasn't been done before. I'm basically just taking all the elements of the best tactical shooters out there and combining them all into one game. Essentially, all you're doing is recreating what has been done in the past, but with newer engines and graphics. Right? It's like taking SWAT 4 and re-releasing it on Steam as is and saying, here, brand new tactical shooter, and people would play it nowadays and be like, whoa, this is something new and interesting, even though it's a game from 2005. Essentially, you're kind of doing something like that. But anyway, I actually wrote down an entire list of what I'm going to be talking about. And first and foremost, we're going to be going over movement controls, which is obviously the epitome of developing a tactical shooter. It has to feel just right. You can't create a shooter that has strange shooter mechanics or functionality that doesn't correlate with what you would experience in the real world. It has to be as true to form, as true to life as you could possibly achieve through a game. So without further ado, let's go through the list. So the first thing is actually borrowed from Ground Branch, and if you guys have watched my video, The Epitome of Movement Controls, about Ground Branch, then you are probably familiar with where I'm going with this, and that is the low ready weapon posture and weapon placement. So you can lower it, you can bring it up into your shoulder, you can do all kinds of things, you can manipulate the weapon however you want, and based on where it's placed, determines the actual speed you're going to travel at when using shift as the speed modifier. So to me, it's something absolutely intuitive and crazy awesome that to see come into fruition in tactical shooters lately. In fact, Ground Branch is the only game to do this. Of course, you can look at Arma and be like, well, you can lower your weapon in Arma, but that's different. That's not low-ready posture. Low-ready posture is what you adopt when you're expecting to come into contact with an enemy. You put your weapon in low-ready, and you're walking, looking over top of it, so whenever a target pops up, all you do is you raise your weapon and you pull the trigger. Instinctually, it's very effective and fast to do without actually having the weapon obstruct your vision, being directly in front of your eye socket the whole time. So it's a combat-ready stance compared to Arma 3's casual weapons down, you're walking around, interacting with civilians, and winning the hearts and minds. That kind of thing is what Arma 3 does. In this case, like I said, it's a combat-ready stance. So we would borrow that because I think it is easily the greatest thing to happen to shooters in a long time. If you've played Ground Branch, which you can go and download the free technical preview, I've mentioned this a million times, you can try it out yourself and just see how awesome this system actually is. Because of it, if you hold down shift while you're moving around, if your weapon is up, you jog at a faster pace with the weapon shoulder readied. If you lower the weapon, it brings you into a sprint/run. And of course, you have the default walking speeds as well. So it's really nice in how fluid everything feels without you having to press millions of keys. All you have to do is just press right click and shift. That is it. It is literally that simple. Now, where I would change things a little bit is instead of using the scroll wheel to toggle the actual weapon position. So currently the way it works in Ground Branch is you click the middle mouse button, it brings the weapon up or down. So it's either shoulder readied or in the low ready posture. Now, if you actually bring the weapon up by clicking the middle mouse button, I rebinded it to the right mouse button. I've talked about this many times because it's a lot easier. But if you toggle the weapon position up into your shoulder ready and you scroll up, it'll toggle between whatever sights you have. So if you have an ACOG, or say you have an ACOG and a canted iron sight, or you have an ACOG with a small reflex sight on top of it, you can actually just keep scrolling up and it'll toggle between the two. If you scroll down, it'll bring the weapon back down into the standard first-person shooter kind of screen orientation, where basically the weapon's in the bottom right of your screen, which is known as the point shooting stance in real life, where you're not actually aiming down the weapon, you're aiming along the weapon. So where I would do it differently here, for the sake of what I'm going to be talking about later on in the video, because it would conflict if I didn't do this, it would be pressing the right mouse button, so tapping it, toggling, will bring the weapon from low ready to shoulder ready. If you want to actually aim through the sight, you would just hold down the right mouse button. Alternatively, if you're walking around and your weapon's already in the low ready, if you hold down the right mouse button, it'll automatically bring it up and then sight it, like most shooters. But if you want to toggle it into the point ready, or the point shooting ready stance, like shoulder ready, you can just right click, tapping it, you know, toggling it up and down, however you want. Now, if you want to alternate between whichever sights you have, it would be pressing the middle mouse button or whatever button you want to actually bind that to, because obviously you're going to be able to control it. I'm just kind of going through the default controls of what I would think would be ideal. And then you would just release the right mouse button when you want to go back to the point shooting stance or shoulder ready stance, and then you just click it to lower the weapon again. So it's very simple. The whole point of this is to just make everything super simple and feel like every other shooter out there, while adding this extra mechanic that allows you to differentiate movement speeds based on the weapon posture. So if the weapon's lowered and you hold shift, it's a sprint. If you aren't holding shift and you're walking around, you're moving regularly, right? It's just a regular walk. If you have the weapon up, you're walking around. If you sprint by holding shift, it makes you run or shuffle or a tactical pace. The urban pace you'd picture, where you're moving quicker but the weapon's up, and obviously you're not going to be nearly as accurate because the weapon's moving around a lot, but you're allowed to move quicker with the weapon up. So it gives you 3 to 4 speeds based on that alone. Now the next thing I like, which comes from Rainbow Six Raven Shield, which hasn't been utilized in many games at all, which is kind of a shame because it was a really neat concept. It does have some downsides, but if with a little tweaking, it could actually be very effective. And that is the leaning system they have, where basically it's a modifier. You hold control. So if you hold control down, you are now able to use the mouse by moving it right, left, up, down, or whatever to change your character's stance very dynamically. Like it moves it in a way that feels like very smooth and natural, which is really good when you're actually trying to get those perfect shots off on certain angles that you can't get by just simply leaning with the Q and E keys. Q and E will obviously still be there, just like Rainbow Six, but this added feature allows you to get those really complicated movements that you want to achieve. It simplifies it compared to, say, Arma 3. Arma 3 has it, you hold control and you press W or S or D and A. WASD, and you can adjust your height and all. That's really complicated and annoying. Imagine being able to do that with just holding control and moving your mouse really quickly, and it just smooths out where you want to be instantly. The only drawback of this is you can't really shoot accurately while you're doing it because your mouse is preoccupied with actually adjusting your height, stance, and whatever. But if you can actually get really good with it, even when you're playing Rainbow Six, you can actually adjust it really quickly, shoot a few targets, and then hold control and then adjust back. And it's really easy to do that. The problem with Rainbow Six, however, is that the sensitivity for actually standing, like lowering yourself or raising yourself, is really slow compared to leaning left and right. So if you make it all 1-to-1 on mouse sensitivity ratio, where everything just feels natural and it's fast, so the sensitivity is like, because in real life you can obviously move really quickly, right? You want to be able to do that quickly. You want to be able to like pop up, lean right, and then hold control and move your mouse all the way back down so you're back behind a car or whatever piece of cover you're using really quickly and fluidly, which is absolutely critical to ease the player's ability to control his character. You want to have it feel not complicated. It has to be all streamlined and very simple. That's key to making it feel completely natural. You don't want to make the player feel over encumbered with all these keys he has to deal with just to be able to move his character around. You want to make it just feel, again, completely natural. So next up on the list is something I'm going to be borrowing from Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter on the PC, and it's very simple. Being able to slide into the crouch and diving into the prone. It's something that's not completely necessary, but will just add to the ability to perform how you wish to. Having that momentum to be able to slide into a crouch behind a wall or behind cover while you're being shot at, it feels awesome as hell to pull it off, and also it's something that's actually done in real life to a degree. So having it in the game, very simple. If you're sprinting and you hit crouch, congratulations, you slide into a crouch. And if you want to dive into the prone, it's the same thing. It makes it easier to get behind cover. That's the thing. Like if you're sprinting, it'll actually lower your stance as you're getting into cover versus just running into cover and then crouching. Because as you're running up to that piece of cover, they can still shoot you while you're, like your head's above it, or maybe your whole upper torso is revealed behind a car or something, and they can just shoot you. But if you're sliding into it, it has that momentum and that speed to be able to get you down behind that cover quicker, alleviating the potential to actually get shot in the process. Not only that, it just looks badass. Like when you're playing the game, when you slide behind cover, it looks cool. You got dust kicking up off your feet, and you have actual full first-person animations. You can see everything happening. It's cool as hell to have. And having it in a game where you're running outside in urban environments or whatever, and you need to get to cover quickly, being able to slide will help with that process. The next thing on the list is the shift modifier again, and this is where I was talking about earlier how it would conflict if you had the scroll wheel available to actually change the weapon posture and the sights and whatever. Because what I'm proposing here is something that a game called Hidden and Dangerous 2 has done. And even games like Splinter Cell Chaos Theory have done, and that's having the scroll wheel be able to adjust your speed in an analog style fashion. So you scroll up, the more you scroll, the faster you scroll back, you move slower. Now, this could be combined with shift. So if you're holding shift, that is the speed modifier. If I scroll up, I will move quicker. If I scroll down, I'll move slower, but never slower than the default walk speed. That is critical. So the idea here is that if I'm walking around sweeping rooms, I can just be holding shift the whole time, slowly scrolling up and down, modifying my speed as I'm moving through the environment. Whenever I see a target, I can raise my weapon, or if it's already raised, I just hold down the right mouse button, and I can engage while adjusting my speed if I so desire. Which in fact, even if you're going to start engaging, you're not really going to be adjusting your speed because you're going to want to have that constant speed. Or you're going to want to stop altogether so you can get a nice stable firing platform. So it's something I think that would actually be very beneficial to the player themselves while making it incredibly simple yet again. You just hold shift as the modifier, you scroll up and down, and adjust your speed incrementally. Now if you let go of shift and you press shift again, it'll remember the last speed you were at. So if you want to set it to a certain speed and always have it at that speed, you can do that and just hold shift and modify your speed. The whole point of being able to adjust your sights using the middle mouse button is so that you can be scrolling your speed and adjusting your sights all in real time while being able to move your character. That's absolutely critical, again, for feeling natural and streamlined. You don't want to over-encumber the player. This is something that's going to feel completely simple to the player. Like, you're going to be doing it, it's going to feel like you're not actually playing a game. And that's the whole idea. You want to feel like you are in full control of your character at all times. And that's absolutely critical. Having that ability would create all kinds of different variables for gameplay that otherwise wouldn't be there with standard hold shift move at this speed or not at this speed. Combining it with the actual weapon ready lower posture can also be really neat concept on how you want to do it. So if you have your weapon lowered, you scroll all the way up, it goes into a sprint versus having to have like double tapping S or some other method of having a full-blown sprint. You can adjust your speed incrementally based on that. Next up, ambidextrous weapon handling. This has not been done in many games, and being able to switch to your left shoulder or your right shoulder, or left-handed and right-handed shooting, is something that a lot of operators are actually trained to do. I myself, not being an operator, as a regular soldier, even when I played paintball back in the days playing in tournaments and whatever and winning money, we were ambidextrous. Ambidextrous is critical for being able to lean around corners without exposing yourself all that much. If you're a right-handed shooter and you want to lean left, congratulations, you're showing off your entire left portion of your torso. Whereas if you're leaning around the right, you're only showing the furthest part of your shoulder, the side of your face, and the weapon itself. So it's minimal exposure. Being able to be ambidextrous allows you to do that on both ends. And also, if players like to be left-handed most of the time, instead of having to go into the ini files or configuration or whatever to adjust where you want the weapon to be, you can just adjust it all in real time, making it feel completely natural and dynamic. Those words are going to be spit around a lot through this whole video, so, get used to it. But yeah, ambidextrous weapon handling, absolutely critical to me, I think, in a gameplay sense. A lot of games let you do it, where you can adjust over-the-shoulder camera, that kind of stuff. It'd be nice to be able to do it in first person as well. Now, this next one is actually borrowed from a game that isn't even a tactical shooter, not even close. And the whole reason why I came up with this in the first place is because I think it would be, again, streamlined, very natural, and it would feel fluid. And it gets rid of the whole bunny hopping issue. Now, I don't like the ability to jump in tactical shooters and milsim. The reason why is because a lot of the times you'll get those players that react to incoming fire by jumping on the spot. Alright, like this comes from Halo 2 days, this comes from Call of Duty, this comes from a lot of shooters where basically you're getting shot at and suddenly you're jumping around trying to evade fire. And even though tactical shooters make it a little bit more difficult to jump, people still do it and it looks utterly ridiculous. So the ability to do away with jumping while also being able to make overcoming obstacles very easy is mandatory for a game like this. So what I'm thinking is borrowing the free run mechanic from Assassin's Creed. Now hear me out. You may think this sounds strange, but the whole point of it is to have an animation system that plays all in real time, allowing you to overcome obstacles in your path. So imagine that, being able to just hold down space, you start climbing over a wall, or you, well, obviously not the way Assassin's Creed does it. I mean like realistic wall heights. Like if it's about as high as you throw your weapon up, you climb over it, that kind of thing, right? Like a very realistic way of actually getting over cover or getting over minor obstacles in your path. You just hold space down and you just do it. All in real time. Which, again, alleviates a lot of that issue of bunny hopping, and it alleviates the ability to vault over things. Like a game like Arma 3, you have to press V or whatever key you have selected to vault over something, and it's a predetermined animation, and it can look weird, right? Like you're trying to overcome an obstacle, and sometimes it'll clip through it, or whatever the hell may happen. In this case, again, it's simplified, and looks really good from an animation perspective, seeing everything just play out in real time as you're moving. In fact, if say you have a bunch of rough terrain in front of you, like you have rocks and minor low obstacles, you can be running with your weapon in your shoulder, holding space down and vaulting over it all in real time just by holding space as the modifier, while you're actually able to engage and shoot all at the same time. Obviously, you're not going to be super accurate, it's going to be difficult to pull off, but the point is you're able to do it like you can in real life because you are able to move very fluidly and fast in real life. And being able to translate that into a game without making it look all weird with a simple vault or jump or whatever, having it play like the same way Assassin's Creed does is free run mechanic where you automatically overcome obstacles, would make the game look more presentable and again, make it more simplified. The key here, again, to this whole video is to make this whole process simple. Absolutely simple so that it doesn't over encumber the player. This will also allow you to get through thick foliage. Now, most games, you'll have thick foliage that you can't go through and there's just an invisible wall preventing you from going through it, or you just go through the thick foliage like it's a hologram. And that obviously isn't exactly ideal for an accurate representation of real life. So what I would do here is create that same modifier. You hold space down, it allows you to push through thick foliage like you would in real life. Now, a little bit of a funny story from my military experience. Thick foliage is really hard to get through, right? And I remember one time we were advancing to contact through a field, and unfortunately there was a big ass tree, like a bunch of trees directly in front of me, and we were doing a section attack and I had to push through it. So everyone was yelling at me to get through this tree. Instead of going around, I had to go through it, and they were forcing me to go through. So it's like, okay, I gotta push through this, it's gonna take a while, it's gonna be really, really hard because this is friggin' trees, man, like pine trees, whatever the hell trees they were. Those little seeds, if you guys are familiar with like those tree seeds or whatever the hell they are, that have like, they look like they're really spiky and like porcupine-like and they stick to your clothes, you know, they get embedded in your fabric. I basically came out the other side covered in that shit with scrapes and cuts all over my face and body because I was pushing my way through it, and it was kind of hilarious because on the other side I'm all clean and then people are yelling my name, figuring out where the hell I am, and then I come bursting out of the freaking bushes covered in the shit, like blood trickling down my face and everything, just like, alright, let's keep going. You know, like that kind of comical type of situation. It was really funny, but anyway. It would allow you to do that. So thick foliage, it would allow you to push through that thick foliage in a way that's realistic, where you're not going to be able to shoot and engage unless you come to a complete stop, and even then, you're going to be having a hard time because there's too much pressure. You know, all the trees and the branches pushing on you, it's too much pressure to be able to do anything other than try to push through it. This will change the gameplay dynamic, because say you want to actually push through certain foliage, you can get through it tactically to get an advantage. You can get to the other side, you can flank around your team. Players won't expect that because it's time consuming, it's not easy to get through it, all while not making it just an invisible wall, not making it a full-blown obstacle. It's an obstacle, but it's an obstacle that you can actually traverse with time and energy, and that's the whole point. So the idea of that whole space modifier is to allow for all those variables, all those things to be achievable just by holding down space. Again, you can imagine that's incredibly simplified. Without having to press space or do any kind of key combinations or whatever, it's just hold it and the whole game takes care of it for you without being overly complicated, and hopefully without any issue. The idea here is to make it super simple, so it's not gonna be like Assassin's Creed where you accidentally jump off a wall and do something stupid that you didn't want to do. It should just be very, very simplified. Anyway, moving on, the last thing for the movement controls I want to discuss is weapon collision, because weapon collision is critical for actually determining gameplay variable. You want to be able to have a shorter weapon like an MP5, a more compact submachine gun, or a sidearm when you're entering a building to have an advantage over those who have longer weapons like a regular assault rifle or a regular rifle or battle rifle or light machine gun or whatever, right? You need to have that realistic depiction of weapon length and the ability to interact with the environment in real time. Now, I'm going to put a link in the description of an actual video. Some developer who, he's actually, I think he's going through school, he's working with UE4, Unreal Engine 4, and he was partially working on Squad. I don't know if he's still working on Squad anymore. I don't think he's with them anymore. But that link in the description will talk about, or will show you what I'm talking about. And real-time weapon collision, meaning you can actually butt your weapon up against the door frame. So if I'm walking in, I can actually move it up against the door frame, and if I keep turning, the weapon will actually keep wrapping around, stuck to the door frame like it would be in real life, until I lower the weapon to bring it back up again. This will allow you to actually, in real time, stabilize your weapon. The idea here is that you can actually go up to a low wall and manually rest the muzzle on the wall to stabilize your shot and be able to engage targets. The whole idea here is that it makes it simple, yet again, to be able to rest your weapon without having to press a key, because it's all handled in-game dynamically. You just rest the weapon on something. If you want to lean up against a corner, say you want to lean around a corner, you can bring your weapon up, you can lean out, you can push it up against the wall so it's kind of rested and stationary there, and you can get more accurate shots on target with exposing yourself less. If you actually watch that demo video, you'll see just how cool the idea actually is in practice, and you'll see where I'm going with it. So I recommend you go down there in the description of this video and you watch that video to get a better understanding. So that pretty much wraps up all the movement controls. We spent 21 minutes talking about that. I guess we'll spend the last 10 minutes or 9 minutes, so I guess it'll be a 30-minute video yet again, talking about mission design, because this is also critical for a tactical shooter. Mostly, in my mind, obviously having very good controls is #1 priority. I mean, even if you have shoddy AI and you have shoddy missions, so long as the controls are really, really good, the game will actually feel good to play, and that is very important. But obviously, to make the overall experience really good, you need good mission design, and you need fantastic AI. AI goes without saying. I'm not going to go on this huge rant about how good the AI has to be, but it has to be absolutely exceptional and believable. But now we're going to talk about mission design. I want to bring back the old school, insert into your mission, complete your objectives, extract. This has not been done many times. This hasn't been done at all lately, actually. Almost every single game you play now is you insert, you do a bunch of missions, there's a whole bunch of loading screens in between, and then you have some kind of crazy cinematic exit or whatever. That's just, you know, cinematic and not really real time, and you're not in full control of what's happening. I want to bring that back. I want to bring it back where you insert, either you're going to do a halo jump, you're going to parachute in, or you'll get inserted by Chopper, or you get inserted by a rib, or you get inserted by Zodiac, or, you know, friggin' underwater submersibles, or whatever the fuck it's gonna be, right? You get inserted into your mission. You have your briefing that plays beforehand, giving you all the details, maybe some geographical maps explaining the area, giving you like something you can familiarize yourself with the area where you're gonna go into, so you can strategically plan how you want to do things. And then you get inserted into your mission. You get to pick your loadout, you pick your gear, you pick what you want for it, and then you get inserted into the mission area, and the insertion takes about 2 to 5 minutes. The insertion alone has to take time. It's not going to just be like, oh, you jump out of the plane, or whatever. No, it's going to take some time. There's got to be that element, that feeling of we're going in to a scenario, because that alone increases immersion significantly. When you're riding in a helicopter for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, riding to your objective, if you play Arma online, you do that, if you ever ride in a chopper with someone, go into an objective, anytime you get to do that, it creates the sense of immersion that you're really there. And it helps the player to feel like the game is actually happening, it's more alive. And that's what you want to do, you want to feel like you're really getting something done. So increasing the length of that insertion is critical. Once you get inserted, obviously you're on the ground, you can start your mission. You plan out how you're going to do things, you move forward, you complete the objectives however the hell you want, total player freedom. Maybe you'll, you know, some dynamic things will happen in the game world naturally, but overall you have complete and total freedom on how you want to tackle the objectives so long as it gets done. I think back to Arma 2. Arma 2 is a prime example. The very first mission you do is like that. You have all these objectives, but you can tackle it however the hell you want. And it's really cool, and it felt freaking awesome. You want to achieve that level of immersion and that level of player freedom, making them in total control of what's happening. After you complete your objectives, there's an extraction point you have to get to. So you gotta move to the extraction point, and it's either gonna be a helicopter, it'll be a boat, like a rib or a Zodiac. Again, whatever the hell it may be, you have to extract after the mission is complete. It's not gonna just be like, congratulations, mission completed, and the screen fades out and gives you some bullshit score. No, once you are done your objective, you are not finished until you get safely out of the zone you're in, out of your area of operation. So all that has to be happening in real time, all in one mission. No loading screens in between. Pre-mission briefings and plannings, again, absolutely critical. You want to be able to sit down and have some commander explaining things to you to make the whole situation feel more real. You want to have it be very, very compelling and realistic, something that can actually be happening now, or in the past, or in the future. Whatever it is, you want to make it as believable as possible, so when you get deployed out there, you feel like you're actually doing something aside from just going in there and killing enemies. Because sometimes you shouldn't even be killing enemies at all. Maybe you're doing just an intelligence gathering mission, maybe you're going on recon, or whatever the case may be. You want to just get some information, relay it back, and extract, all without confronting the enemy. If you confront the enemy, then, well, you got to deal with that too, and it's all real time. So the mission doesn't just fail because you confront the enemy, you have to deal with it, and you got to do something about it, and then you got to get the hell out. So that to me is about creating that dynamic experience that players crave, because people aren't getting that nowadays, and it sucks. So that. Of course, also, we want to have this goes with the pre-mission planning, briefings, all that stuff, a team room. A team room, if you're playing co-op, Ground Branch is doing something like this, where basically there's a team room before you actually deploy. The idea is you listen to the deployment, you walk off to the team room, and once you're there, you can gather your equipment, guys can organize how you want to do things in like a locker room style kind of situation, and then you go to the deployment area, and then it kind of loads into your insertion point. Or into the insertion scenario, how you're going to insert. So basically, we want to have that as well, which is kind of like, again, further improving that immersion factor, making you feel like you're really, really there. And of course, I'm going to be talking about something after this that is referring to America's Army, which is the progression system, but I'll get to that at the very end of the video, which kind of translates in that whole immersion thing as well. Now, the next thing is obviously mission variety, because to me, having the missions take place in the same spot all the time is freaking boring as hell, alright? Like, I love fighting in all kinds of weather and terrain. I like to be in the Arctic, I like to be in deserts, I like to be, most especially, in thick jungle terrain, because I love jungle warfare, or tropical warfare, stuff like that. If you think of, like, Crisis, or any movie, or any, like, Colombia, any country that's, like, you know, super lush foliage and really beautiful and that kind of stuff, and it's raining and it's dark and, you know, like that kind of thing, you know, it's freaking awesome fighting in the jungle, right? Like fucking Predator. You know, you're moving through the jungle with Arnold Schwarzenegger, that kind of shit, right? You want to have a whole ton of variety of deployments. Obviously, campaigns would pertain to where you're going to be located, but there would be multiple campaign tiers. So it's not going to just be like this single player mission, and then the next one brings you to some Arctic thing. No, it's going to be like, here's Operation so-and-so, and then you do all the missions in that area, and then Operation this, and then all the missions in that area. Similar to the way the old Delta Force games used to do things, where basically missions took place all over the world, but there was an overall goal to those missions that you're trying to... They're like every single area you're in is like a mini campaign, essentially. To me, that is absolutely critical, again, for making players feel like they're actually contributing and doing something in the game world. They want to have all these outstanding objectives and missions, and you want to feel like you're traveling the world. When people are thinking about joining the army, you know, you just talk about, you join the US Army, travel the world, you get to see, like, that's kind of what you want to achieve in a game. You want to be doing all this crazy shit, all kinds of different stuff. Feel like you're actually going all over the world, getting a whole bunch of shit done, feeling like a total badass. That's what you want to achieve in a game. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is the America's Army progression system. If you played America's Army 1 or 2 and even 3, you are probably familiar with this. And that's going through training. So you're not going to just get the game and have everything unlocked and be super awesome and get to go do shit. There's going to be some form of progression system, but the progression isn't like get a certain amount of XP and then move on. No, it's going to be like America's Army, where you go through basic training and you slowly qualify and work your way up. So if you want to use an M203, congratulations, you have to qualify on that first. If you want to use a sniper rifle, you have to qualify as a marksman before you can even get the chance to become, or to go on a sniper course, then you take the sniper course. If you want to go into special forces, you have to complete the course for that as well. If you want to be a medic, you have to complete the course for that as well. It creates this sense of immersion again, the sense of realism that is there. That's what America's Army did. America's Army was kind of like a recruiting tool outside of just being a game. It inspired people to really get involved in the game. It felt really awesome. I can tell you right now, becoming a Special Forces operator in America's Army was no easy feat. You had to go through every single training course that was in the game and almost get perfect scores on every single one before you even qualified for Special Forces training. Then you go do Special Forces training, which was a really difficult scenario mission you had to get through, and which was an escape and evasion mission without confronting the enemy. If you can do that, then you're qualified for actual special missions, like going on special operations, and it felt fucking awesome doing it, working in smaller teams, using Humvees to travel around the area, picking off targets from like distance, hostage rescue, all kinds of shit all over the world. That felt incredibly realistic, and that's what you want to achieve again in in a game like this. So having that sense of progression, obviously we're not going to be starting you at basic because this, well, depending on the scenario, I guess, because you can have different kinds of campaigns. You can have conventional warfare, spec ops, whatever, and you slowly work your way up by completing those missions and completing the qualifications you need to be able to get to that point. You can almost make the entire game basically a real-life military career achievement scenario, where basically you start off as a regular grunt, you go on missions overseas, doing the missions that, you know, regular infantry would do, and then you come back from deployment, you take more courses, you qualify for selection, you go through selection, you pass all that, then you're a special forces operator, and then you get to do missions in that way, and then it keeps evolving from that, creating that sense of progression, like you really are moving up in the world in a game. You want to have that sense of like, I'm here in the game, I start off as nothing, at the end of the game, I'm a freaking badass operator, and nobody else, everyone else who's starting the game, or if you go online, you're playing with other people and they see the equipment and all the stuff you earned, it just makes you look like an actual badass. Without it being some stupidly XP driven, you know, people have to earn it, essentially. You're not gonna just get the best stuff, you have to earn the qualifications to be able to use that gear and equipment to actually work your way up to tier 1. So, that's my entire idea for it. I mean, I kind of wanted to go a lot more in depth, but we're already at 31 minutes here, and that pretty much kind of nailed out all the things I really wanted to talk about. So, that's pretty much it. I mean, to me, movement control systems is absolutely critical, and everything else kind of falls in after. But mission design and AI, again, are absolutely critical as well. So it's like the whole overall experience has to be truly engaging and truly realistic and authentic, which is key. So let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with it? Do you think this would make a decent tactical shooter? I don't know, like, this is something I would personally love to see myself. If I knew anything about game development, I would do this myself, but I don't. And I probably wouldn't be able to make this by myself anyway, even if I use Unreal Engine 4, which I have been playing around a lot with to see if I actually could come up with something, but trust me, it's a lot harder than you think. It takes a long time to learn it, and yeah. But anyway, this is just my idea for a game that I think can be exceptional in the world today where we don't have anything like this. You're basically taking all of the best elements from all the old best shooters in the past and combining it into this overwhelming, culminative, awesome experience that we don't get nowadays. And ultimately, that's what I would love to see. So my name's been PepperBelly. Thank you guys for joining me today on this super long video, and I will see you guys on the next one.